I'm a goat. No, not the greatest of all time, yet, but a Capricorn goat. My guest today is a stinger. No, not the cocktail, but a Scorpio. I'll let my guest, Kathy Aman, share her traits, her expertise, and insights on astrology, yoga, staying youthful, and so much more. Let's start now. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your yogi host and founder of YiaYia. I've been practicing, teaching, and loving yoga for over 25 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. And so are my guests. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, and I am so excited to have my guest, Kathy Aman, here today. She's an amazing leader, teacher, friend, human, and I just want to speak a little bit about our history. I met Kathy around 2010 in a yoga studio where I was teaching, and I had just unwillingly moved back home because my marriage ended. So I was pretty messed up. And I do remember she practiced with such a fire and a consistency as she could. She was traveling a lot at the time, if I remember correctly, and we had some really wonderful conversations. I didn't know at the time that she was also going through something pretty important. And 13 years later, well, wow, here we are back again. She now owns 2 yoga studios up in upstate New York in the Rochester area, one in Victor and the other one in Rochester. And the best things about going through transformations or difficult times in your life is when you have people there that are going through them with you and kind of watching, and you're helping each other. So we did a bit of reminiscing about that tumultuous time for both of us. So if you don't mind, Kathy, could you talk a bit about, I know I was going through a divorce and end of a marriage, and if you don't mind, would you be willing to talk a little bit about what your transition or difficulty was and what drew you to yoga, or how yoga found you?
Sure. Thanks for having me, MJ. I'm so glad to be with you. Yeah, I actually love to tell people that in that time in my life, I was either going to go on antidepressant drugs, or I happened to just very randomly, and by the way, I don't believe in randomness. I do believe it was the universe, led me to your class on Sunday afternoon, and my healing journey began. So I'm the oldest of 3 girls who grew up in a very traumatic, challenging childhood, for sure. It was not all healthy and wholesome. It was a challenging childhood. And I am the oldest of 3 girls, and my middle sister and I are 2.5 years apart. And without any doubt, she was always, all of my life, my very best friend. Until, like you said, in 2010, Nancy and I had different beliefs and, I don't know, understandings about what was healthy and safe for us. And we had a big falling out, and Nancy and I separated and literally didn't speak to each other until, again, just this year, 13 years later. So it was a period in my life where I felt very lost, where my grounding, my security, my safety had been taken away from me. And I was really trying to find, who am I in the absence of my sister and my relationship?
Yeah, we are both going through similar things, finding out who we are now outside of the relationship that we were used to.
Yeah.
Interesting that we were both kind of at the same place at the same time. Well, yoga, certainly we know, because we love it, can help us align our energies and lead us towards healing. You teach now with the message that everything is energy, which I love. And you also have channeled part of your energy into astrology. You'd said that can teach people how to harness their own energy, bring it into alignment, and move towards greater healing. Let's start with how you got interested in astrology.
Well, I think I honestly was always interested in it, like all of my life. I am what I like to tell people, a double Scorpio, which means my sun and my rising are both in Scorpio. So I have a lot of that deep, intense, transformative energy inside me. Yeah, it was just always kind of an interest. And then I don't know. I was in a place in my life where I was seeking more joy. I was seeking more of like, what do I love? And trying to lean into more of that. And I heard another yogi talking about astrology and how it had helped and guided her life. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to learn about that. And I very randomly signed up for a training that cost me a lot of money. And I remember saying to another friend, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? It costs so much money. I don't have time to do this training. And she very poignantly said to me, oh yeah, because nobody in this world needs somebody who's passionate about something or doing their interests. It was very sarcastic, but she really pointed the finger at me to take ownership of my own joy and my own learning and my own experience. And so I went forth and I did the training and absolutely fell in love. And there was no looking back after that. Very similar to my yoga journey. Part of a thing with Scorpio is we get obsessed with the things that we love. And so I got obsessed with yoga, and I also got obsessed with astrology.
Yeah, I don't call it obsession anymore. I call it a need. It's just a need. And it's great that you were aware that you were looking for something that brings you joy and
Yeah.
you found it. And gosh, if everybody could do that, wouldn't we all be happier?
Right. That was my friend's point.
And so when people find out that when you are an astrologer, that you are, do they immediately ask you to read them their forecast?
Yes. And also, like, I must admit that, like, I'm as intrigued myself. Like, whenever I can't figure something out, I actually go to the stars and I start thinking about like what transits are happening and how they're affecting my chart. And really, that's the reason why you go to astrology, is that it is good guidance, and it's thousands of years old worth of guidance. So I understand people's obsession with like wanting a forecast, because I too am always looking at my own chart and my own transits and what's up on deck and what am I going to be experiencing and what am I going to be challenged by and also learning from. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as I was researching and doing all of the background before this podcast and this interview, in the background of my mind, the Age of Aquarius song was going over and over. And because I'm in theater and, the musical Hair, and everybody knows that song and everybody knows how it starts. And I think everyone does have a curiosity about astrology, whether they want to admit it or not. I have a daily Capricorn little forecast in my inbox every day, and I check it every day. I know it's a very general reading, but somehow it can provide me with little tips or little nudges, reminders about things. And with people having such a mixed feeling about horoscopes, some people think it's completely bullshit, and other people just really look to the stars every day. You explained to me in very simple terms about the big three, which I had never heard. You just mentioned it previously about your rising and your sun. And I'd love for you to explain the big three.
Okay, well, I have to back up a little bit and say the horoscope. This is one of the things that as astrologers, we just tingle like, wow, it's so your horoscope is simply your sun sign. And then they simplify that all down into like, this is what's happening for you. But there are many planets that we as astrologers look at. And depending on what type of astrology you're studying, there's, anywhere from 10 to 20 that you could be looking at. The astrology that I work with, I look at 14 planets. So that's why the one sign is not necessarily relevant. The big three are your sun, which represents your ego, the way you show up in the world, how other people see you, maybe even how you see yourself. And then the moon. The moon is our emotional body, how we feel about things, how we process our emotions. And then the rising is like our soul. It's our best self. It's energy that maybe we're not even familiar with, or maybe we're striving to be more like that. And these 3 planets have a 10-degree orb around them, where all the rest of the planets have 5 or less degrees around them. So those 10 degrees around your sun, your moon, and your rising mean that like they're big energies that you possess, that you show up with, that you work with, that you are. So I always tell people when you're reading the horoscope, make sure you're reading the horoscope for your sun, the horoscope for your moon, and the horoscope for your rising. Because when you read all 3 of them, you'll have a much better idea of what challenges or blessings are coming your way.
And how do people find out what those are? What their 3 are?
You could do a reading with somebody like myself or someone else. And a birth chart reading is where we as astrologers really share with you both your big 3 and many of the other planets, Saturn, which is our life's lesson, and then the personal planets that are Mercury, Mars, Venus. Let's see, your sun, your moon, your rising. Yeah, those are the 6 that are your personal planets. And it just gives you an understanding of your own energies and how you show up in the world. And I can be found at shinebright.space. We're a .space, not a .com. So it's simply www.shinebright.space.
Yeah, I love that address. It's just a wonderful address instead of .com, .space. It's so like, yep. It's all encompassing. Yes. And I think I do know mine is Saturn, because I've done a little bit of research on my, it's more about personality traits, I think and you can read the signs and, oh, you're this way, you're that way, you're this way. Well, you don't absolutely have to be that way if you have the awareness, in my opinion, of, even before I started this podcast, I have to have everything in alignment. I'm a practical person. I'm a driven person. I'm a loyal person. I already know this about myself, but there's positive and negative traits. So the negative traits that I overwork, and just being aware of that doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just an awareness of it. Would you agree with that?
Well, I wouldn't, because in astrology, we don't call things positive or negative. That's your human description of it. You've labeled it negative or positive. It's all for you. It's all trying to teach you. It's all trying to guide you. From an astrology or energy perspective, I would call it a low vibration or a high vibration. And we get to choose how we show up in that energy stream. So maybe we enter at the low vibration, what you're calling negative energy, and then we talk to ourselves, we love ourselves, we do the things that bring us joy, we lean into our own confidence, and quickly we move from that low vibration up to the high vibration. And the job of the spirit inside each of us is to evolve from working with those low vibrations to working with the high vibrations. And the way that we work with them is simply by becoming aware of the way that we are currently showing up. And then we do the work, which is the awareness. It's the adjustments, the small changes to the way that we show up. And we get better and better and better with working with the higher and higher and higher vibrations.
That's so lovely. And it seems so simple. And I think even if you take the astrology picture out of it, isn't that what we're all trying to do?
Yes, it is. And that's it. That astrology is just the science of the energy that can be interpreted or understood by us so that it's easier for us to do that work. Like when you asked about the forecast, when I look at what's coming in the transits and can recognize, this one's going to feel, as you said, negative or low vibration or challenging. I never say hard anymore because nothing's really hard. That's again a human label we've put on it. Challenging. But challenges when we don't run from them, when we don't fight them, when we lean in and get curious. What are you trying to teach me? Challenge. What are you trying to tell me? What is the part of myself that I'm not seeing, that I'm pushing against here, that I'm resisting? And then when I can lean into it and let it unfold, let it open, let it show me, like I'm trying to show you that you can love yourself even in challenging times. I'm trying to show you that you're worthy of something more than those low vibrations that you're sitting in. And then hard stuff just becomes opportunities.
Yes, I completely agree that obstacles are opportunities. We had talked about this before, both of us, going through starting over, starting something new, willingly or unwillingly. Sometimes we're pushed into something that we are just digging our heels into the ground, going, no, 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 no. And it doesn't matter. You're going to be pushed into it regardless. And we also talked before this interview about manifesting. So I'm kind of leading from what you just said. And you said a wonderful thing that stuck with me, that when people get stuck or we try to manifest what we want or what we need, and we may not choose the appropriate path because we haven't had examples in our past or in our lives that really shows us how to move forward into a different path. Can you share with our listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, everything is energy. We are energy, and everything around us is energy. And as we send out our energy, whether it be that low vibration or the high vibration, that same energy is drawn back to us. So if we don't have an experience of what, the magnificence of what we're trying to bring towards us, it's very hard for us to generate the energy out to draw it back in. So we really have to get real clear in our hearts and even in our heads, and even in our bodies about what we are seeking. So I believe, and astrology teaches us, that we manifest towards us not only things and situations, but also people that are resonant with like what we are trying to create. So for example, you here being a trailblazer, starting this podcast, doing something new and inventive that you've never done before, I 100% believe, MJ, that I have manifested you back into my life as an example of what it is to be a mature woman, starting again, doing something new, something that feels challenging because you believe in yourself and because this is something that matters to you. And the reason why I've manifested you to me, to show me what that looks like, is I too am in the place in my life where I am endeavoring to create something new, something I've never seen before, something I've never experienced before. And I need examples of what it looks like to be in that work. And so I've manifested you towards me so that you can be my inspiration. We also manifest towards us challenges that will give us the opportunity to grow. But it's about like what we're feeling in our hearts, what we're believing in our heads, and how we're like taking care of our physical body that then sends out the energy that brings towards us what we need, what we're seeking, what is also seeking us.
Yes, I completely believe that what you seek is seeking you. I've said that over and over to myself. And can you share with our listeners what your other jobs had been prior to your owning 2 yoga studios and being a yoga teacher? Because that is a transformation that is just admirable. And also, you know how people always say, oh, I wish I could just do this. I've always wanted to do this, but they never quite get there. So maybe your story will help to inspire them.
Yeah, I mean, I started in the business world. I actually met my husband. We were both purchasing agents actually for a computer company. And during that time, there were a lot of salespeople that we were taking care of. And I remember watching them with all of what seemed like, bullshit that they were giving out to their customers. And I was like, I could do that. I could do that. And so then at some point, I just like left the purchasing world and went into sales. And I had a really beautiful 25 plus years in sales. And I started as pretty much a salesperson and then moved up into leadership and then finally became a vice president and then eventually a senior vice president working in the call center industry. I started in collections and then moved to customer service. And my last job, I actually worked for an Indian-owned company that was doing business in America. So it was kind of the opposite. The Indian company gave the American a job, and I had a job here in the States selling for them. But I did a tremendous amount of travel to India, to the Philippines, to the UK and beyond. And I just really got to listen and create opportunities to serve our great big customers. And so then at some point, I felt like I was serving wealthy men by making them lots of money, and wanted to do something where I was serving others and maybe making myself and others money. And so I took the big risk and left the corporate world, and invested really all of myself, both heart, money, mind, and everything that I have into this yoga world. And it's been a wild journey, but it's been really interesting how my old experience comes forward in creating and starting anew and pivoting when necessary, and really listening to what the customers want, what my employees want, and how to grow. And so I think that everything that we do in life, even when it feels like it's not relevant, always is relevant. The universe has a path for us. The universe is always serving us. And so everything always comes forward. We bring it with us. We bring it with us.
And you said service, which I think we all are meant to be in service of each other and ourselves. And also, you are a good listener, not only to your customers, but now you've learned to listen to yourself. And I really think that is a skill and a practice that yoga helps us. People don't understand, if you have not done yoga, perhaps you may find it in a different type of discipline where you really learn about yourself and things show up during a practice or during a walk or during a meditation. And it's hard to explain to people what happens when you are a consistent, dedicated yoga practitioner. It's for me, see, I can't even say the words. I can't imagine my life without it anymore. And I always say yoga is like a lifelong journey, and I want to have a lifelong career in yoga, with yoga. And because it brings you to me, it brings so much other wonderful things. For me, creativity. For me, yoga helps me with my creativity, and also helps me with courage, frankly. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about aging, since this is the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. The good, the bad, the oh my God, what the hell is happening now of it. Obviously, there's so many shifts we go through. I think the transitions as an older, wiser person, you're going through, after 50, you might be an empty nester. You might be retiring. You might be shifting jobs. You may be going through a loss or a divorce. You may be a caretaker for a parent. It's so big. It's so huge. So honestly, how do you feel about aging so far?
Yeah, everything you said is all true. And I love the way that you actually worded that. I am on a regular basis saying to my husband that there should be some kind of book that says, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Because I'm like, nobody talks about this stuff. How do you know that your eyelids are going to droop and that you're going to have age spots over your entire body, right? And parts of your body that used to be supple and tight are now saggy and crepey. It's the weirdest thing ever.
It is. Yes.
It's such a beautiful, this reminds me so much of astrology and the challenges or the negative and the positive that we were talking about. Aging is really the opportunity to love ourselves, even when we don't necessarily like the way that we look or what's happening in our body or the way that things are slowing down. And it's an opportunity to slow down and love ourselves anyway. And so I have a lot of tendencies, thank you, double Scorpio, of being very, very hard on myself and very, very critical. And sometimes it's worked very well for me because it pushes me and makes me strive and thrive, but also it holds me back. And so aging and learning to love my body and the way that it moves and the things that I can and cannot do anymore. And everything that you just described, MJ, is present in my life with empty nester and parents on my husband's side that are aging, and just all the demands of being a mature person require that you have to slow down a bit. You have to give yourself some space. You have to give yourself some grace. And like, grace is ultimately the best gift that we give to ourselves and also to others. It is my hope that we as older people can mirror for the younger generation what it is to be kind to ourselves.
Agreed. I remember thinking when I was little that, I'd see my mother with an apron on, standing over the stove or peeling potatoes. And I just vividly remember going, oh my gosh, when I'm 40, that could be me. Right? Which is, my 60s now, it's completely not true. But that idea of what aging meant, it just keeps shifting. And,
Yeah.
And it's all a mindset too. It's a belief. Yes, I look in the mirror, and because I've been in theater for decades, my body has always been judged completely. If you didn't fit the costume, or you weren't tall enough, or you didn't have the right hair color, or whatever it was, your tits aren't big enough, you're too flat, your thighs are too big, you don't have good turnout. It's all what you don't have. So that overcoming that has been such a challenge. And even now in my yoga practice, there's a lot more, I call it beautiful abundance. And instead of, the blob in between my navel and, the bottom of my hips, that little pooch. So my forward folds feel differently. And I'm like, what's happening? So it's real and it's true. But for me, I feel healthy in my mind, and I'm aware of all of that. And that is all thanks to yoga and awareness. And I don't have to put a leotard on anymore. So I'm all good with that. Just yoga clothes, which is fine. I asked you previously if you could give one tip to each of the signs, and you had a answer that really blew me away, and it was unexpected. Do you remember how you answered that?
I do, because it really is like the whole mission of my astrology teaching. And it is in every astrology reading or every coaching that I do, this is my only message. And that is, love yourself. The highest form of energy is love. And the highest form of love is self-love. So all of the work that we do in this crazy world that we live on as spirits in human bodies, and all of the challenges that we move through, are really just to teach us to learn to love our perfectly imperfect selves wholly, always.
That's the best answer ever. And that is the hardest challenge ever, because most of us, I can't speak from a man's perspective, but most women probably say a million negative things to themselves about themselves on a daily basis. I know it because it happens to me. And I want to stress that you meditate, I meditate. And the one thing that I want the listeners and the viewers to understand is that meditation is not to turn your brain off. Meditation to me is like I'm watching my own weird ass head movie. Like I'm watching the movie in my head that is like, wow, I could, maybe write a screenplay about this. It's so bizarre. So it's not about that, but it's about being still, being quiet, and taking those, watching those thoughts, those ridiculous lies, which most of them are. And then after you're done, and you're going to come back to the cushion or the chair or your walk or whatever, and the same thought's going to be there again, over and over and over and over again, until there's one time where it's not present anymore. And then you think, oh, where is it? So I want you to share with our listeners how meditation, I know you've been at a very consistent, like I said, I recognized this in the beginning when I first met you, that you practice with fire, determination, and consistency. So can you tell the folks about your meditation journey?
Yeah, my persistence comes with my South Node in Virgo and my Mars in Capricorn. So I like to do those earthly things, and I like to do them regularly. And yes, you're right. Meditation is the one tip and trick that I give everybody. I believe everybody in the whole entire world should be meditating. Meditation is, I mean, yoga definitely put me on the path and has helped a lot. But meditation, as you said, is the ability to activate the inner observer, to actually be able to kind of step out of our body and step out of those stories that we're constantly telling ourselves and step off the path that we've been walking on for way too long and just really begin to observe, why am I doing that? Why do I want to keep doing that? And if I don't want to keep doing that, then how do I stop it? And stopping it is really a practice, as is yoga, as is meditation, as is anything that we do with any kind of diligence and dedication and discipline, really. All of those things that we practice, we eventually become. So we don't perfect them, we just become them. And we are imperfect people. So the practice of them will always be imperfect, but the practice is so important because I always tell people yoga never gets easier. You just get stronger. And the same is true of meditation. It never gets easier. We just become more and more of the observer until in many ways when we are both practicing meditation when we sit and when we're moving through our lives.
Yeah, and I think people have this crazy idea that you have to sit still to meditate. No, that meditation can be in motion. It can be petting your dog or your cat or being in nature or going for a swim, whatever. Yeah, get you. It's so vast and it's really important. And I tell me the number of days that you've consistently meditated, because I think that's wonderful.
I think today when I did it, it was 428. And I had gotten almost to like a year, about a year ago. And then, I think my grandkids spent the night, woke me up early or something, and I didn't get my meditation on. And so then I messed it up. But a year ago in about May, I decided this is it. I'm going to do this for an entire year. And so in May of this year, I finally made it a full 365 days. But now at this point, I literally can't function without starting my day with meditation. I need that 20 minutes to sit still, to be in my body, to quiet my mind, to allow my emotions, to be what they are.
And you're doing exactly what you teach, just to love yourself. And that's what it is. It's self-love, it's self-care. It's not selfish. It's not, because people say, I don't have time. I have to do that. The minute they say that to me, I'm like, that's why you should be doing it. So,
yeah.
Anyway, I have one final question. I'm so appreciative of your time and your insights and your knowledge. And once again, to find Kathy, you go to shinebright.space, shinebright.space. And also, if you're up in the Rochester area, those are the name of your 2 yoga studios, correct?
Yeah. And we're more than just yoga studios. So we are doing all the Reiki and astrology and acupuncture and assisted stretch. And we're doing all kinds of classes that we're calling series. And we have a full retail boutique and a really healthy, wholesome Whole Foods cafe where we offer smoothies, juices, lattes, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner items. And we're called Shine Bright Wholeness Center. And we're located in Victor and also in the CollegeTown area, right near the University of Rochester and Strong Memorial Hospital.
Yeah, that's all upstate New York, my hometown. And I can't wait to come back and visit sometime and see your spaces and see you and give you a big hug. The one question that I have been asking everyone is, usually they ask, what would you tell, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self? But I want to switch that around. Knowing what you know now with all your experience, your knowledge, your life experience, what would you tell your older self?
I think the answer is really the same thing that I would tell my younger self, right? It's like, now as my older self, I can look back and think of all the ways that my younger self was afraid or didn't believe in herself or held herself back, right? And I now know that she made it to here because of her belief in herself, because she kept going. And so, that's really the work, is to be able to look back at what we have learned and what we have gained and what we actually do have in our back pocket. And so the message for my older self is, keep going, keep believing in yourself, keep loving yourself, because there's nothing more powerful and potent in this world than somebody who believes in themselves and loves themselves.
Perfectly said. And I love you. And I love the time that we've spent and the future time that we'll be spending together, because I know whether it won't be another 13 years when we do connect again. And thank you again, Kathy Aman, for bringing your time, your knowledge, your zest, and your passion for all that you do to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I love you, and thank you so very, very much.
Thanks, MJ. Thanks to you as well. Thanks for the way that you are such an inspiration and such a source of love for so many of us. The way that you are constantly recreating yourself anew is just such an inspiration to myself and so many others, that life is long and the time is short. So like we have all the time we need, and we need to get busy. Get busy now, loving yourself, enjoying your life, and doing what makes you really fulfilled. So I wish you the best of everything with this beautiful podcast, and can't wait to follow along and send on all my friends your way as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kathy. I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find me and subscribe for more youthful and healthy information on my website, shareyogawithmj.offeringtree.com. Or if you know how to navigate social media, find me on Facebook /Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. And Instagram @Mary Jane Waddell. Remember, Jane with a Y. Now, this podcast would not be possible without my youthful older producer, editor, and creative friend, Andrea Canny. And you can find Andrea at Andrea Canny, that's CANNY.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who've shared their time and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well and stay youthful.